At the trust meeting, my aunt scoffed. You? He gave you nothing. You're a mechanic. My cousin smirked. We already moved in. I placed the real document on the table and watched them freeze. When people talk about family, they usually mean comfort, belonging, maybe even some version of pride. For me, family always felt more like a waiting room I'd been accidentally locked inside. My name is Nico. I'm 29. I live just outside Santa Rosa, California, in the same hills where my godfather built his estate nearly 40 years ago. My mom died when I was 11. After that, her brothers, my uncles, decided I should stay close to the bloodline. That meant stiff Sunday dinners, golf lessons I hated, and fake smiles that never quite reached their eyes. When I refused to wear slacks to a country club lunch at 14, my Uncle Ray muttered, "He's got too much of his father's dirt under his fingernails." They never said it directly, but it was always there. I was the odd one out. The disappointment. Marco was different. He wasn't technically family. He was my mom's best friend, a retired architect who never married and didn't believe in small talk. But when the rest of the family waved off raising me, Marco stepped up. He didn't try to be a parent. He just made space. Every afternoon after school, I came to his home, a glass and stone place tucked into the vineyard-lined hills, half house and half cathedral, built with his own two hands. Instead of lectures, he handed me blueprints. Old ones. Sketches from projects he never finished or things he designed just for fun. I learned how to read them before I ever got good at algebra. Marco didn't teach with words. He showed me how things fit together. Whether it was restoring an old leather-bound drafting table or rebuilding a broken chair leg with handmade joinery, he made me feel like care was something sacred. By the time I hit 18, I wasn't college-bound. I had a small shop in town fixing vintage motorcycles and restoring furniture. I didn't make much, but I was good with my hands, and Marco never once treated me like I'd failed him. He just nodded when I brought over my first restored 1953 BSA, then asked if I wanted to take the long route through the hills. That was our rhythm. Quiet, unspoken loyalty. Until last fall. That's when Marco started forgetting things. Names. Directions. Sometimes he'd stare at a pencil like it wasn't quite familiar. He was still sharp, but slower. And then the family came. They started trickling in like ants after a spill. Lorena, my mom's sister, brought flowers and fake smiles. Her daughter, Camila, showed up with herbal teas and Instagram captions about checking in on our roots. Suddenly, everyone wanted to help. One evening, as I was sorting Marco's old plans in the study, he handed me a thick, sealed envelope. His hand shook, but his voice didn't. "This is the version of the trust they haven't seen," he said. "Keep it safe." I stared at him. "Marco, what's in it?" He looked past me, toward the vineyard where the sun had just dipped below the horizon. My intentions. That was it. I didn't ask more. Just nodded and slipped it under the false bottom of the drafting cabinet in the study. Because if Marco trusted me, that was all I needed to know. Marco died 3 weeks later on a rainy Tuesday morning. It was quiet. Peaceful, the hospice nurse said. He passed with one hand resting on an old sketch pad and the other gripping a folded photo of him and my mom from the early 80s, before any of the money or the lawsuits or the gallery tours. Just the two of them, arms slung around each other, laughing in the sunshine. I organized the memorial myself. Marco wouldn't have wanted a church or speeches, so I held it in the barn-turned workshop at the back of the estate, the same place where he taught me how to refinish walnut wood and draft spiral staircases. We filled the space with his old students, craftsmen he mentored, neighbors who brought fig jam and handwritten notes. Someone brought a dusty model he'd helped design for a community park. Another showed up with a chipped marble bench Marco had insisted on repairing himself. Nobody talked about inheritance. They talked about details. About how Marco could look at a single floorboard and tell you what kind of tree it came from. Then, of course, Lorena arrived. Fashionably late, with Camila trailing behind in sleek black sunglasses and an outfit that looked more suited to a film premiere than a memorial. She clutched my hand like we were long lost. "Nico," she whispered, lips brushing my cheek. "You've done such a lovely job. Truly. The property, it's very special." Camila sniffled and gave a performative sigh. "He was so talented," she said, glancing around the room like she was taking inventory. "This place really deserves to be shared. Like a design retreat or a private venue. Something with vision." I didn't answer, just nodded and stepped aside. Back at the house that evening, I sat in the study with the fire low and a mug of cold coffee untouched beside me. The sealed envelope Marco had given me weeks earlier rested on the table in front of me. I hadn't opened it, not fully. I just read the note tucked underneath. "Don't let them frame your silence as weakness." I held it for a long time. They were already circling. I could feel it. The way Camila kept asking how Marco structured the trust. The way Lorena had asked, twice, where he kept the deed. They said it with concern. With affection, even. But I knew better. That night, around 10, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. This is Mr. Avella, the voice said. Crisp. Formal. Marco had me listed as executor. I'd like to schedule a reading of the trust. Are you available to come into my office next Monday? I looked at the envelope. Then out the window, where the vineyard rolled on quietly in the darkness. Yes, I said. I'll be there. Because whatever game they were playing, I wasn't bluffing. And Marco hadn't left me unarmed. Mr. Avella's office sat on the 12th floor of a sleek steel-and-glass building in downtown San Rafael. The kind of place with leather chairs nobody really sat in and walls covered in abstract art. I arrived 10 minutes early and still found Lorena and Camila already there, perched on opposite ends of a designer couch like they were posing for a magazine shoot. Camila barely glanced up from her phone. Lorena offered a chilly smile. Nico, how good of you to make it. I sat across from them and said nothing, just stared out the window at the fog rolling in over the hills. Inside the conference room, Mr. Avella greeted us with a polite nod and placed a thick folder in front of him. We'll begin with the version of the trust currently on file, he said, flipping through the documents. Dated August of last year. Camila smirked. That's the one where everything goes to us, right? I didn't react. Just let her say it. Mr. Avella cleared his throat and started reading. I, Marco D'Angelo, being of sound mind and body, hereby designate my primary beneficiaries as Lorena Silva and Camila Torres. I leave to them the entirety of my estate, including but not limited to the property known as 2149, Vineyard Lane, associated furnishings, bank accounts, and intellectual property. Lorena reached over and gently squeezed Camila's hand. Camila's grin widened. And, Avella continued, I omit Nico D'Angelo from this trust by personal choice. Camila let out a tiny breath of victory. Well, she said, leaning back in her chair, I suppose that settles it. I reached into my jacket pocket and placed the sealed envelope Marco had given me on the table. I have something else, I said. Lorena's smile stiffened. What is that? She asked, though I could already hear the panic slipping through the calm. Mr. Avella raised an eyebrow. Mr. D'Angelo? It's another version of the trust, I said. Dated October of last year. Marco gave it to me directly. It's notarized. Camila let out a sharp laugh. Oh, come on. You're seriously trying to pass off some back-pocket scribble as real? That's not how any of this works. But Avella was already inspecting the envelope, eyes narrowing as he pulled out the documents. He flipped through the pages with the steady rhythm of a man who'd seen his fair share of fraud and legitimacy. His expression changed on page 2. This is legitimate, he said slowly. Signed, witnessed, notarized. Filed with the county clerk 2 weeks before the previous version. And supersedes it. Camila sat up straight. Wait, what? Avella adjusted his glasses. In this version, the primary beneficiary is Nico D'Angelo. The estate, the land, all financial holdings, they go to him, in full. The silence hit like a brick wall. Lorena's jaw clenched. That must be a mistake. It's not, Avella said firmly. This document is final. It's valid. And it's binding. Camila turned to me, eyes wide. You had this the whole time? I looked at her. Since the day Marco asked me to keep it safe. You tricked him, Lorena hissed. You manipulated an old man in decline. No. I cut in, my voice even. He knew exactly what he was doing. And he didn't want his life's work ending up in the hands of people who only showed up when they smelled opportunity. Mr. Avella slid the new trust into his folder. As far as this office is concerned, the matter is resolved. Camila looked like she wanted to scream. Lorena's face had gone pale. I stood, nodded to Avella, and walked to the door. Just before leaving, I turned back. You came here with a script, I said. But the ending? Marco rewrote that himself. And I was just getting started. 2 days after the will reading, I walked into Mr. Avella's office again. This time, I brought another envelope. Lorena and Camila were already there, seated stiffly, trying not to make eye contact. Camila looked like she hadn't slept. Lorena was composed, but in the way a glass is composed just before it shatters. Before we proceed, I said, handing Avella the envelope. There's something else Marco wanted on record. He opened it carefully. Inside were printed emails, audio transcripts, and 2 signed affidavits from Marco's nurse and his financial planner. I had organized it all into a neat timeline, because that's how Marco would have done it. Avella's eyes moved quickly as he scanned the top pages. These are significant, he murmured. Camila leaned forward. What is it? I answered without looking at her. Emails from Lorena requesting Marco's medical records under false pretenses. Messages to a financial advisor trying to clarify account access, using Marco's name. That's not true, Lorena snapped. Audio recordings, I continued. From phone calls where you implied Marco was mentally unfit and you were acting in his best interest. That one was 2 months before his official diagnosis, when he was still leading woodworking seminars at the community center. Avella placed the papers down and folded his hands. This goes beyond questionable behavior. Lorena turned red. This is nonsense. Fabricated. I had them authenticated. I cut in. Marco saw it coming. He made sure there were witnesses. 2 of them signed statements. One of them was with him when he handed me the envelope. Camila was shaking her head slowly. This is crazy. You're twisting everything. We just wanted to help. No, I said calmly. You wanted control. You thought he was weak, and you made your move early. Avella nodded grimly. From what I see here, this qualifies as attempted financial exploitation. Given the notarized will and the timeline, the court would view this very unfavorably. Lorena slammed her hand on the table. We'll contest it. We have every right to. You'll lose, Avella interrupted, his tone sharp now. And if you proceed, this evidence becomes part of the record, which means the investigation becomes formal. You could be charged. Camila looked at her mother, panic blooming in her face. Mom, we should stop. Lorena hissed something at her under her breath. Camila shrank back. I leaned forward slightly. Marco didn't just guess. He knew. He told me weeks ago he didn't trust either of you. That's why he updated the trust. That's why he left the rest of this behind. You think this makes you noble? Lorena snapped. You were never close to this family. Never one of us. I smiled just a little. That's the first honest thing you've said. Avella stood. Unless there's a legal challenge, we are finished here. Nico is the sole beneficiary. And, given what's in this envelope, I strongly advise against further escalation. Lorena stood abruptly, gathering her things with jerky movements. This isn't over. You're right, I said. Because next, I'm changing the locks. As they walked out, I stayed seated. Let the silence return. The kind Marco liked. The kind where you could hear yourself think. When the door clicked shut behind them, Avella looked at me. You did the right thing. No, I said. Marco did. I just followed the instructions. And I was going to honor them, all the way. I hadn't stepped foot in the house since the funeral. Not because I didn't want to. I just couldn't stomach the idea of walking into Marco's home and finding their fingerprints on everything. But after the meeting with Avella, I knew it was time. The trust was validated. The estate was mine. And whatever they'd done while they were pretending it already belonged to them, I was about to find out. I pulled into the long gravel driveway late in the afternoon. The vineyard was golden under the setting sun, the rows neat, the air thick with that late summer dust Marco used to call real perfume. But as I rounded the bend, my stomach sank. There was a matte black luxury SUV parked in the gravel turnaround, tires half on the lawn. Trash. I got out slowly and walked up the front steps. The door was unlocked. Inside, it hit me all at once. Marco's house didn't feel like Marco's house. Not anymore. The living room, once full of warm wood and stone, had been stripped of its soul. Sleek, modern furniture now sat where Marco's handcrafted chairs had once been. The wool rug he designed, gone. Replaced by something artificial and aggressively white. Framed motivational quotes hung where his architectural sketches used to live. I moved slowly through the house, heart pounding, each room worse than the last. They'd rearranged everything. Family photos had been taken down. The stack of design books from Marco's studio had vanished. The kitchen island was cluttered with brand-name health snacks and a half-drunk bottle of imported wine. They'd made themselves at home. I walked down the hall to Marco's study. My hand hovered over the doorknob. Please, I thought. Please let this one room be untouched. I pushed the door open. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. The leather chair by the window. His drafting table, clean and empty. The wood-framed photo of him and my mom still sat on the shelf. And above the desk, the original pencil sketch of the house. A loose, beautiful thing he'd drawn when he was 30, dreaming of building something no one else could. I exhaled, shoulders dropping for the first time all day. They hadn't found the safe. The one hidden behind the wall panel in the back of the closet. They didn't even know it existed. I checked it just to be sure. Still locked. Still mine. I sat in Marco's chair and let the quiet wrap around me. For a few minutes, I just listened to the creak of the house. The way it used to breathe. Then came the sound of tires crunching gravel. I stood and walked to the window. Lorena's SUV had returned. Camila's BMW was behind it. Of course. I walked outside and down the front steps as they parked. The engine cut. Doors opened. Both of them looked startled to see me. What are you doing here? Lorena asked, squinting like I was trespassing. I reached into my back pocket, pulled out the copy of the notarized trust, and held it up. Coming home, I said. Camila's face fell. Lorena didn't speak. She just stared at me like she couldn't believe I hadn't disappeared quietly. But I hadn't. I was still here. And now, they were the ones on borrowed time. They didn't get out of the car right away. Camila stayed in the driver's seat, clutching the wheel like it might steer her out of this mess. Lorena, though, she opened her door slowly, stepping out in a fitted blazer and oversized sunglasses, like she was about to walk into a boardroom. Like this was a negotiation. I waited on the front steps. Not in the doorway. Not hiding. Right where Marco would have stood. Nico, she said, giving me that sharp, almost maternal smile I'd seen her use on contractors and waitstaff. Let's not make this ugly. I didn't say anything. Camila finally climbed out too, her heels crunching in the gravel. She looked less confident than usual, like she'd just realized this wasn't going to end in another quiet win. Lorena cleared her throat. We've been thinking, she started, about a compromise. That word hung in the air like smoke. We all care about the property, she went on. And I think we can agree it's too much for one person. I mean, the land alone requires full-time maintenance. And the taxes. She paused, as if waiting for me to acknowledge the stress she assumed I couldn't handle. We'd be open, she continued, to co-managing the estate. Or even selling it, splitting the proceeds equally. That way, no one feels cheated. That's fair, right? I let the silence stretch until it got uncomfortable. Then I stepped off the porch and walked toward them. You know the locks were changed last night, right? Camila blinked. What? I have the receipts, I said. Rekeyed the whole house. Study, workshop, garden doors. You'll find your keys don't work anymore. Lorena's jaw tightened. Nico, we're trying to work with you. You also removed photos, I said. Family photos. You took down everything Marco kept up. You brought in furniture he would have hated. Trampled the garden he planted with my mother. Camila swallowed hard. We didn't know. You knew, I said sharply. You didn't care. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You even knew about the safe. Camila flinched. What safe? I looked at her. The one behind the closet panel in Marco's study. The one only he and I ever touched. She paled. We never. You were digging, I snapped. And now you're panicking because you didn't find anything worth stealing. Lorena crossed her arms. This is absurd. We've done nothing illegal. Not according to the affidavits, I said. That shut her up. Camila turned to her. We should go. Lorena looked like she wanted to scream. Instead, she smiled tightly, as if still clinging to some illusion of control. You really think you've won something here? No, I said. I didn't win. I was chosen. There's a difference. Lorena's face hardened. We'll see you in court. You won't, I replied calmly. Because Avella already filed trespass orders. Sheriff's coming by tomorrow. You have until then to get your things. Camila's mouth opened, then closed again. You're serious. I nodded. I always was. I turned and walked back up the steps. Behind me, I heard Lorena mutter something under her breath and Camila hiss. He's not bluffing. I didn't look back. Marco built this place to outlast noise. And I just made sure it would. The next morning, I stood at the kitchen sink, watching two sheriff's cruisers ease up the gravel driveway. Their tires kicked up thin clouds of dust that hung in the air like smoke. I set my coffee mug down and wiped my hands on a towel, heart beating steady. Deputy Santoro stepped out of the lead vehicle. He wasn't just some badge from out of town. He'd gone to school with me. Had his brakes replaced at my shop last winter. His face was calm, no drama. Just a guy doing his job. Behind him, the passenger door of the second cruiser opened. Camila stepped out first, already flustered, arms crossed tight across her chest like she could shrink the moment away. Lorena followed, dressed in another crisp pantsuit, face stiff with practiced outrage. I opened the front door before they knocked. Morning, I said. Nico, Santoro nodded. Got the court order here. Says they've been notified. Just here to enforce the timeline. They've had more than enough, I said. I gave them the courtesy of yesterday. He turned back to them. Ma'am, he said to Lorena, holding up the paperwork. You've got 10 minutes to collect any personal belongings. Nothing else leaves the property. Lorena stepped forward, incredulous. You're seriously doing this? We're family. No, ma'am, he said. You're on private property with an expired legal claim. And the court says that ends today? Camila looked like she wanted to cry, but she didn't. Instead, she shot me a look I couldn't quite place. Regret, maybe. Or shame. They didn't argue much after that. The deputies followed them in as they gathered a few bags, clothes, toiletries, whatever was still left upstairs. I stood near the doorway, arms folded. Watched it all with the same quiet resolve Marco always carried when something needed fixing. When they came back down, Santoro opened the front door for them. As they stepped out onto the porch, Lorena turned around, eyes narrow. You're going to regret this. I shook my head. Marco knew who was worth building for. It wasn't you. She looked like she wanted to slap me. But instead, she just walked to the cruiser, heels cracking against the stones. Camila paused behind her, eyes flicking up to the house, then to me. I didn't mean for it to get like this, she said softly. I didn't answer, just stepped aside and let her pass. The car doors shut. The cruisers pulled away, tires humming low against the gravel. I stood on the front steps as they disappeared around the bend, watched the dust settle. Then I turned and closed the door behind me, locked it. And for the first time since Marco died, the house felt quiet again. Not empty, just clean. And finally, undisturbed. The next morning, I got up before the sun. There was no ceremony to it. No triumphant music or slow, meaningful montage. Just me in an old t-shirt and jeans, rolling up my sleeves and getting to work. The first thing I did was open every single window. Let the real air back in. The kind that smelled like earth and stone and wild thyme from the hillside. The kind Marco liked. Then I started cleaning. I worked from room to room, stripping back everything they'd touched. The throw pillows, the marble trays, the imported espresso machine still in its box. They all went out to the garage. I scrubbed the floors myself, even though I could have hired someone. I didn't want strangers walking through this place, touching things like it was a museum. By noon, my hands were blistered and my back was aching, but the house felt different. Lighter, like it had exhaled. Later that afternoon, I found Marco's old notebooks in a box they'd shoved in the back of the coat closet. Water-stained, dog-eared, pages stuffed with sketches and tiny block lettering. Some were plans for additions he'd never built. Others were quiet ideas he'd jotted down just for himself. A floating staircase inspired by redwood roots. A bathhouse hidden in a ravine. One entry stopped me cold. Nico has the patience most people spend their lives trying to fake. He doesn't see beauty as an accident. He listens to objects. I hope he never trades peace for people who never respected it. I closed the book and sat there on the floor for a long time. That night, I replaced the locks again. Not because I thought Lorena would come back, but because I wanted the physical key in my pocket to be mine. Something new. Something final. I moved Marco's drafting table into the old sunroom and cleared the whole space. Left just the table, the stool, and a row of windows looking out over the vineyard. I set my own sketchpad down and sharpened a pencil that hadn't touched paper in years. I wasn't going to build skyscrapers or flashy resorts. That was never the point. But I could restore. I could rebuild. Homes. Furniture. Places that mattered to people who didn't see it as a way to flip a profit. A restoration consultancy, I decided. Small scale. Precise. Quiet. Emails from cousins and second aunts started trickling in after the legal dust settled. Most of them pretended they hadn't picked a side. One even said she never really trusted Lorena. Another asked if I was still angry, or if we could move forward as a family. I didn't reply. They had their moment. I had mine. Letting go of bitterness didn't mean opening the door again. Marco hadn't left me a fortune to flaunt or a mansion to parade around. He left me intention, craftsmanship, quiet purpose. I spent that week digitizing his blueprints, framing a few of the originals, restoring the cracked leather on his old desk chair, even though no one else would ever sit in it. Each day ended with the same ritual, locking up, flipping off the porch light, and standing on the patio, watching the vineyard settle into night. Not in victory, just in peace. A few weeks later, I found myself on the patio at sunset, holding a chipped ceramic mug Marco had made back in the 80s. The tea inside wasn't anything fancy, just lemon balm from the garden, but it was warm, and the hills were quiet, and that was enough. I didn't miss the noise. No more tense dinners. No more forced small talk or smiles I had to practice in the mirror. The house had been scrubbed of their perfume and presence. What was left behind was the kind of silence Marco always said was earned. I leaned back in the old wooden chair and watched the light shift across the vineyard. The rows looked endless this time of year, gold, then green, then almost blue as the sun dipped low. Somewhere down in the lower fields, a hawk cried out, and I heard it clear as a bell. Inside, the house smelled like cedar and clean linen. Fresh flowers stood in a reused olive oil jar on the kitchen counter. The drafting table in the sunroom had a dozen new sketches laid out, none of them perfect, all of them mine. Earlier that day, I'd found a final letter Marco had hidden inside an old architectural history book. The envelope had my name written in his sharp, blocky script. No stamp, no date. I waited until now to read it. The letter was short, only a few lines. People like us, we build so others can breathe. Don't waste time explaining your worth. Just live it. That was it. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope, then tucked it under a smooth rock on the table beside me. No more questions. No more proving. I didn't know if Lorena and Camila would ever come back, try some new angle, some last-ditch scheme. Maybe. Probably. People like that didn't fade easily. But it didn't matter. I was ready. Not with rage or lawsuits or panic. Just with the truth. With the weight of wood and stone and everything Marco had left in my hands. The breeze picked up gently, rustling the vines in slow waves. I took another sip of tea. Warmth spread through my chest, and not just from the drink. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defending anything. I wasn't trying to earn my place. I had won. I had built one. And if anyone ever questioned it again, well, Marco already answered for me. I smiled, not for the win, not out of pride, but because I finally understood something he'd always tried to show me. Peace isn't loud. It's steady. It's earned. And tonight, it lived here,